I watched Marcus hover over my computer screen, his finger moving toward the delete key. My 3 months of work on the quarterly efficiency report was about to disappear forever. The presentation that could save our struggling department was seconds away from being erased by my own manager. "Sorry, Alex," Marcus said, not looking sorry at all. "I need to present something more polished to the CEO tomorrow. Your version is too technical. I'll handle this myself." Click. Gone. My entire presentation vanished from the shared drive. Marcus straightened his tie and smiled at me like he had just done me a favor. Around the office, my coworkers kept their heads down, pretending not to notice. Everyone knew Marcus took credit for other people's work, but nobody dared to speak up. "Don't look so upset," Marcus continued, settling into his chair. "This is how business works. The CEO expects presentations from management level, not junior analysts like you. You'll understand when you've been here longer." I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. "Of course. You know best." Marcus beamed, pleased with my apparent acceptance. He had no idea that I had been expecting this exact moment for weeks. And he definitely didn't know about the email I had sent to the board of directors exactly 1 hour ago. I had joined Thompson Industries 6 months earlier as a financial analyst. The company manufactured industrial equipment, but our sales had dropped 30% over the past year. Everyone blamed the economy, but I suspected there were deeper problems. Marcus Webb had been my manager from day one. Tall, confident, and completely incompetent. He spent most of his time in meetings, taking credit for his team's work while contributing nothing of value. Our department was failing under his leadership, but somehow he kept getting promoted. The other analysts warned me about him during my first week. "Don't share your ideas too early," whispered Jamie from the next cubicle. "Marcus will steal them and present them as his own." I had watched it happen to others. Brilliant solutions would disappear from their computers, only to reappear in Marcus's presentations days later. He was like a parasite, feeding off the talent around him while the company slowly died. But I had dealt with people like Marcus before. During college, I had worked for a consulting firm where the senior partner regularly stole interns' research. I learned to document everything and always have backup plans. Marcus thought I was just another naive junior employee. He was about to discover how wrong he was. The efficiency report had started as my personal project. I noticed patterns in our production data that nobody else seemed to see. Our manufacturing costs were 40% higher than industry standards, not because of market conditions, but because of internal waste. I spent weeks analyzing every department. I reviewed supplier contracts, studied workflow patterns, and interviewed floor workers. What I found was shocking: we were losing millions of dollars annually due to preventable inefficiencies. The solution was complex but achievable. We needed to restructure 3 departments, renegotiate 2 major contracts, and implement new quality control systems. Done correctly, these changes could save the company $8 million per year. I created a detailed presentation with charts, graphs, and implementation timelines. Every recommendation was backed by solid data. This wasn't just another corporate report, it was a roadmap to saving the company. But I knew Marcus would try to steal it. He had been asking too many questions about my little project, and I caught him looking over my shoulder several times. His interest only increased when rumors spread that the CEO was demanding solutions to our financial problems. So I prepared for war. And in war, the most important rule is, never reveal your real strategy. 3 weeks before the presentation deadline, I started my backup plan. I created a dummy version of my report, professional looking but deliberately flawed. This was the version I saved on the shared drive, the one Marcus could see and steal. The real presentation lived on my personal laptop, encrypted and hidden. It contained additional research, more detailed solutions, and something Marcus could never replicate. Interviews with board members about their specific concerns. I had spent my lunch breaks building relationships with key people in the company. Not brown-nosing like Marcus did, but genuine conversations about business challenges. Board member Patricia Collins particularly appreciated my thoughtful questions about supply chain management. These conversations gave me insights that Marcus would never have. I learned which solutions the board would actually support, which departments had hidden problems, and most importantly, which executives were already questioning Marcus's competence. The dummy presentation I left for Marcus was good enough to impress him, but weak enough to fail under serious scrutiny. It lacked the depth and nuance that board members would expect. Marcus would look foolish presenting it. Meanwhile, my real presentation was already in the hands of people who mattered. I just had to wait for the perfect moment to reveal it. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next morning. Marcus had been rehearsing his stolen presentation all week, completely confident in his plan. He even bragged to other managers about his innovative solution to our efficiency problems. I arrived at work early and found Marcus practicing in the conference room. He had projected my dummy slides onto the wall and was gesturing dramatically at the charts. His understanding of the content was superficial at best. "Morning, Alex," he called out when he saw me. "Thanks again for your help with the research. I've really improved your initial ideas." "I'm sure you have," I replied. "Good luck with the presentation." Marcus chuckled. "Luck has nothing to do with it. This is about experience and leadership skills. The board needs to hear from someone who understands the big picture." I nodded and walked to my desk. At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia Collins. "Received your presentation. Impressive work. We'll discuss it at today's meeting." At 9:30 a.m., I received another message from board member Thomas Wright. "Your efficiency analysis is exactly what we needed. Looking forward to discussing implementation." At 9:45 a.m., my computer chimed with an email from CEO Caroline Foster herself. "Alex, please join us for the board meeting at 10 a.m. We need to discuss your recommendations." I smiled and gathered my materials. Time for Marcus to learn an expensive lesson. The boardroom was intimidating. 12 executives sat around a massive oak table, all eyes focused on Marcus as he began his presentation. I sat in a chair along the wall, officially there to provide support if needed. Marcus clicked through the first few slides confidently. He explained the efficiency problems using my research, though he clearly didn't understand the deeper implications. The board members listened politely, but I noticed several exchanging glances. "As you can see," Marcus continued, pointing at a graph, "our manufacturing costs are significantly higher than industry standards. I've identified several areas for improvement." CEO Foster interrupted. "Marcus, these numbers don't match the data in our quarterly reports. Are you sure your analysis is accurate?" Marcus stammered for a moment. "Well, yes, I'm confident in my research methods." Board member Collins leaned forward. "Could you explain your methodology for calculating the waste percentages in Department C?" The color drained from Marcus's face. He had no idea how I had calculated those numbers because he had never asked. He just assumed the data was correct without understanding the underlying analysis. "I used standard industry formulas," Marcus mumbled, clicking nervously to the next slide. The presentation was falling apart, exactly as I had planned. Marcus struggled through the remaining slides while the board grew increasingly skeptical. His explanations were vague and contradictory. When asked for specific implementation details, he could only offer generic corporate buzzwords. "So your recommendation is to optimize synergies and leverage core competencies?" CEO Foster asked, her tone icy. "Exactly," Marcus replied, apparently not recognizing the sarcasm. "We need to think outside the box and paradigm shift our operational matrix." Several board members actually rolled their eyes. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. "Marcus," said board member Wright, "your presentation lacks substance. These recommendations are too vague to implement. Where's the detailed analysis? The cost projections? The timeline?" Marcus looked panicked. Well, I can certainly develop those details after we approve the general concept. That's not how we make eight-figure decisions, Foster snapped. We need comprehensive analysis before moving forward. The room fell silent. Marcus stood frozen at the front, his stolen presentation exposed as shallow and incomplete. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Patricia Collins cleared her throat. Actually, we did receive a more detailed analysis of these efficiency issues. Alex, would you mind sharing your presentation with the group? Every head turned toward me. Marcus's mouth fell open in shock. I stood up calmly and walked to the front of the room. I connected my laptop to the projector with steady hands. Behind me, I could hear Marcus whispering urgently, "What presentation?" "Alex, what are you doing?" The first slide appeared, Thompson Industries Efficiency Analysis, a comprehensive solution. My name was clearly displayed as the author, along with detailed citations and methodology notes. Thank you for the opportunity to present this analysis, I began, my voice calm and professional. Over the past 3 months, I've conducted an in-depth study of our operational inefficiencies. The contrast with Marcus's presentation was immediate and striking. Where his slides had been generic, mine were specific. Where his data was questionable, mine was meticulously sourced. Where his recommendations were vague, mine included detailed implementation plans. Our manufacturing costs exceed industry standards by 42%, I explained, clicking to a comprehensive chart. This isn't due to market conditions, but rather 3 specific operational failures that we can correct. I walked through each problem systematically. The board members leaned forward, asking intelligent questions that I answered with confidence. Unlike Marcus, I understood every aspect of my research because I had actually done the work. Behind me, Marcus stood frozen in horror, finally realizing that he had been completely outmaneuvered. I presented for 25 minutes, covering every aspect of the efficiency problems and their solutions. The board asked detailed questions about implementation costs, timeline projections, and potential risks. I had answers for everything. The total investment required is $2.3 million, I explained, showing a detailed breakdown. However, the annual savings will reach $8.1 million by year 2, providing a return on investment of over 300%. CEO Foster was taking notes. Alex, this analysis is exactly what we needed. How long have you been working on this? 3 months of research and analysis, I replied. I wanted to ensure the recommendations were comprehensive and actionable. Board member Wright looked confused. But Marcus just presented a similar analysis. Are these competing projects? The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Marcus, who was now visibly sweating. This was the moment of truth. Would he admit to stealing my work, or would he try to lie his way out? Well, Marcus stammered, Alex did some preliminary research, but I developed the strategic framework and executive summary. Actually, I interrupted politely, I have documentation showing the complete development of this analysis, including emails with board members seeking input on specific recommendations. The tension in the room was electric. Marcus had just been caught in a lie, and everyone knew it. Patricia Collins pulled out her phone. I have several emails from Alex over the past 2 weeks asking thoughtful questions about supply chain management and quality control processes. These questions directly relate to the recommendations in his presentation. Thomas Wright nodded. Same here. Alex contacted me about regulatory compliance issues and cost-benefit analysis methods. Very impressive initiative for a junior analyst. CEO Foster's expression was stone cold as she looked at Marcus. So Alex conducted the research, developed the solutions, and sought input from board members. What exactly was your contribution, Marcus? Marcus's face was bright red. I provided management oversight and strategic guidance. By deleting his presentation from the shared drive? Collins asked sharply. Marcus went pale. He hadn't realized that IT tracked all file deletions. In his panic to steal my work, he had created a digital paper trail of his theft. I can explain, Marcus began, but Foster held up her hand. No need. The situation is quite clear. She turned to me. Alex, when can you begin implementing these recommendations? I have a detailed implementation plan ready to review, I replied. We could begin phase 1 within 2 weeks. The meeting was over. Marcus had been completely destroyed, and I had just been handed control of an $8 million efficiency project. After the board members filed out, Marcus and I were left alone in the conference room. He slumped in his chair, staring at the table. His carefully constructed image of competence had crumbled in less than an hour. How long have you been planning this? He asked quietly. Since my second week here, I replied honestly. When Jamie warned me about your habit of stealing people's work. Marcus looked up with desperate eyes. Alex, we can work together on this. I can help you manage the implementation. No, Marcus. You can't. I gathered my materials. You don't understand the work because you never do the work. You just take credit for other people's efforts. Everyone does it, he protested. That's how corporate hierarchy works. Maybe in your world, I said. But I prefer to succeed based on actual competence. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Are you going to report this to HR? I smiled. Marcus, I don't need to report anything. In about 30 minutes, CEO Foster is going to call you into her office. She's going to ask for your resignation. Because a manager who steals from his own team is a liability the company can't afford. His face went white. You can't know that. Actually, I can. Because unlike you, I listen when people talk. And the board has been discussing leadership changes for weeks. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus? They're going to offer me your position. I was right about the timeline, but wrong about one detail. CEO Foster didn't wait 30 minutes to call Marcus into her office. She called him immediately after the board meeting ended. I was at my desk, updating my project files, when I heard raised voices from Foster's office. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus gesturing frantically while Foster sat calmly with her hands folded. The conversation lasted exactly 8 minutes. Marcus emerged looking devastated, carrying a small cardboard box with his personal items. He didn't look at anyone as he walked through the office toward the exit. Jamie leaned over the cubicle wall. What just happened? Justice, I replied simply. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Alex, could you come to my office please? It was CEO Foster. I found her reviewing my presentation materials. She looked up when I entered and gestured to the chair across from her desk. Impressive work, she said. The board was unanimous in their praise. We want to move forward with your recommendations immediately. I'm ready to begin, I replied. Foster smiled. Actually, we need to discuss your role in the implementation. The efficiency project will require someone with management authority to coordinate between departments. We're prepared to offer you Marcus's position as department manager. The promotion I had dreamed about for months was being handed to me. But I kept my expression professional. I appreciate the opportunity. What would be the scope of my responsibilities? Foster outlined the promotion details. I would become the youngest department manager in company history, with a salary increase of 40% and authority over a team of 12 analysts. More importantly, I would have the resources needed to implement my efficiency solutions. The board is confident in your abilities, Foster continued. Your presentation demonstrated exactly the kind of analytical thinking we need. Plus, your initiative in building relationships with board members shows real leadership potential. I accepted the position, trying to contain my excitement. Everything I had worked toward was falling into place perfectly. After leaving Foster's office, I returned to find the entire department buzzing with rumors. Word of Marcus's firing had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. Is it true that Marcus stole your presentation? Asked Tom from accounting. "Is it true that you're getting promoted?" whispered Lisa from marketing. I didn't confirm or deny anything. Instead, I focused on preparing for my new responsibilities. There would be time for explanations later. At 4 p.m., Foster sent a company-wide email announcing the management change. The message was brief but clear. Marcus Webb was no longer with the company, and I had been promoted to department manager effective immediately. My phone started buzzing with congratulations from colleagues. But the most satisfying message came from an unexpected source. The message was from my former college professor, Dr. Hamilton, who had taught my business strategy course. Someone had forwarded him the news about my promotion. "Alex, I always knew you had the analytical skills to succeed in corporate management. Your final project on operational efficiency was one of the best I've ever seen. Congratulations on putting those skills to work." Reading his message reminded me of why I had been so confident in my efficiency analysis. Dr. Hamilton had taught us that the best business solutions combine rigorous research with strategic thinking. Marcus had never learned that lesson. The next morning, I arrived early to set up my new office. It felt strange sitting behind Marcus's old desk, but I had earned this position through hard work and competence. My first task was meeting with my new team. The analysts who had suffered under Marcus's leadership for years were now looking to me for direction. I called them together in the conference room where Marcus had been destroyed just 24 hours earlier. "I want to be clear about my management philosophy," I began. "Everyone's contributions will be recognized and credited appropriately. No one's work will be stolen or misrepresented. We succeed as a team." The relief on their faces was obvious. Jamie actually smiled for the first time in months. "What about the efficiency project?" asked Tom. "Are we all going to be involved?" "Absolutely. This is too big for one person to handle alone." Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into implementing the efficiency solutions. The board had approved a budget of $2.3 million, and I was determined to prove their investment was wise. The first phase involved restructuring the quality control department. I worked closely with floor supervisors to redesign workflow processes, eliminating redundant inspections while improving overall quality standards. The changes weren't popular with everyone. Some long-term employees resisted new procedures, and a few supervisors questioned my authority. But I had data supporting every decision, and the early results were encouraging. Within 10 days, quality control processing time decreased by 30% while error rates dropped by 15%. The improvements were exactly what my analysis had predicted. CEO Foster visited my office during the second week. "The board is impressed with your progress," she said. "Department C is already showing measurable improvements." "We're just getting started," I replied. "Phase 2 will have even bigger impact." Foster smiled. "Speaking of impact, you should know that word of your success is spreading beyond our company. I've had calls from 2 industry publications wanting to interview you about operational efficiency." This was unexpected. "Interview me? Your story is compelling." A junior analyst who identified millions in savings, then got promoted after exposing management incompetence. It's exactly the kind of corporate success story that business magazines love. I hadn't considered the publicity angle. But if it helped advance my career, I was willing to participate. The interview with Business Weekly took place in my office 3 days later. The reporter, Amanda Clark, was particularly interested in how I had outmaneuvered Marcus. "Tell me about the moment when you realized your manager was going to steal your work," she asked. I explained how Marcus's pattern of theft had become obvious, and how I had prepared for his inevitable betrayal. Amanda took detailed notes about my backup strategy and the board meeting confrontation. "So you essentially set a trap for him?" "I documented my work and shared it with the appropriate decision-makers," I replied carefully. "Marcus chose to delete my presentation and present inferior work. The consequences were natural results of his actions." Amanda smiled. "That's a diplomatic way to describe a brilliant revenge plot." The article was published 2 weeks later with the headline, "How One Analyst Turned Workplace Theft into Executive Promotion." It detailed my efficiency analysis, Marcus's attempted theft, and the dramatic board meeting confrontation. Within hours of publication, the article was being shared across social media. By the end of the day, it had received over 10,000 shares and hundreds of comments from people sharing their own workplace horror stories. My phone started ringing with interview requests from other publications. Apparently, my story had struck a nerve with working professionals everywhere. The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. I received job offers from 3 consulting firms and 2 Fortune 500 companies. A business school invited me to speak at their leadership conference. Even a literary agent contacted me about writing a book on workplace strategy. But the most satisfying response came from Thompson Industries competitors. 2 rival companies reached out wanting to hire me to analyze their operations. Apparently, word had spread about the $8 million I was saving my current employer. I declined the external offers, choosing to focus on completing my efficiency project. But the attention validated everything I had worked toward. My reputation as a strategic thinker was growing beyond the company walls. Meanwhile, the efficiency improvements continued delivering results. Phase 2 restructuring saved an additional $1.2 million in the first month alone. The board was so impressed that they approved funding for an expanded version of Phase 3. Jamie stopped by my office one afternoon with a huge grin. "Did you see the latest production numbers?" Department B exceeded their quarterly targets for the first time in 2 years. The success felt incredible, but what I enjoyed most was seeing my team members gain confidence. After months of having their work stolen by Marcus, they were finally receiving proper recognition for their contributions. Tom had been promoted to senior analyst. Lisa was leading a new cost reduction initiative. Even the newest team members were taking on additional responsibilities and thriving. 6 months after Marcus's firing, Thompson Industries announced record quarterly profits. The efficiency improvements had exceeded all projections, saving $9.2 million annually instead of the projected $8.1 million. CEO Foster called me into her office with news I hadn't expected. "Alex, the board wants to offer you the Vice President of Operations position. It comes with a seat on the executive committee and authority over 4 departments." I was speechless. In less than a year, I had gone from junior analyst to potential VP. The promotion would make me one of the youngest executives in the company's history. What would my responsibilities include? Expanding your efficiency analysis to our other manufacturing facilities. We have plants in 3 states that could benefit from your expertise. You'd essentially be redesigning our entire operational structure. The scope was enormous, but exciting. I accepted the position immediately. The announcement generated another wave of media attention. Business Weekly published a follow-up article titled "From Stolen Presentation to Executive Suite, The Ultimate Corporate Comeback." This article received even more social media engagement than the first one. I started receiving speaking invitations from universities and professional organizations. My story had become a case study in strategic thinking and workplace resilience. But the best part was the message I received from an unexpected source. The message came through LinkedIn from someone named Karen Miller. The profile showed she worked as a financial analyst at a manufacturing company in Ohio. "Hi Alex, I read about your story in Business Weekly. I wanted to thank you for inspiring me to document my own work more carefully. My manager has been taking credit for my analysis projects, but after reading your article, I started creating backup files and building relationships with senior executives. Last week, I was promoted to manager after exposing my boss's incompetence. Your strategy works. Thank you for showing that competence beats politics." I received dozens of similar messages over the following weeks. People across the country were using my methods to protect their work and advance their careers. My story had become a blueprint for fighting workplace theft and incompetence. The most dramatic example came from a software engineer in California. She had been working on a revolutionary coding algorithm when her manager tried to steal it and present it to the CEO. But she had already filed a provisional patent and documented her development process. When the theft was exposed, she was promoted to lead developer while her manager was fired. These success stories proved that my experience wasn't unique. Workplace theft was a widespread problem, but it could be defeated with proper preparation and strategic thinking. I started a blog called Workplace Strategy where I shared advice on documentation, relationship building, and career protection. Within 3 months, it had over 50,000 subscribers. My new role as VP of Operations brought challenges I hadn't anticipated. Managing 4 departments required different skills than leading a single analysis team. I had to learn about manufacturing processes, supply chain management, and labor relations. But the analytical skills that had made me successful as an analyst served me well as an executive. I approached each operational challenge with the same methodical research and data-driven solutions that had exposed the original efficiency problems. The results spoke for themselves. Within 6 months, all 4 manufacturing facilities showed significant improvements in cost control and production efficiency. Thompson Industries was becoming known as an industry leader in operational excellence. CEO Foster nominated me for the National Manufacturing Leadership Award, recognizing executives who had made outstanding contributions to operational efficiency. At 28 years old, I was the youngest nominee in the award's history. The nomination generated another round of media coverage. I was featured on the cover of Operations Management magazine with the headline, "The Analyst Who Revolutionized Manufacturing Efficiency." During the interview, I was asked about Marcus and whether I felt any regret about his downfall. "Marcus chose to steal rather than create," I replied. "The consequences were entirely predictable. I feel no regret about protecting my work and advancing based on merit rather than theft." The reporter pressed further. "Some people say your response was calculated and cold." "Strategic thinking isn't cold," I answered. "It's necessary. If we don't protect competence and reward merit, incompetent people will continue rising to positions they don't deserve." The National Manufacturing Leadership Awards ceremony took place in Chicago 6 months later. I sat at a table with other nominees, all of whom had decades more experience than I did. But my achievements spoke for themselves. When they announced my name as the winner, the applause was thunderous. As I walked to the podium, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From Marcus deleting my presentation to receiving the industry's highest honor in less than 2 years. My acceptance speech focused on the importance of recognizing and developing talent at all levels of an organization. Too often, brilliant ideas are buried by hierarchical thinking and credit theft. Companies that reward competence over politics will always outperform those that don't. The speech was recorded and shared widely on social media. It became my most watched content, with over 2 million views across various platforms. After the ceremony, I was approached by the CEO of a major consulting firm. "Alex, we'd like to discuss a partnership opportunity. We want to license your efficiency analysis methodology and offer it to our clients. The consulting deal would provide royalties on every implementation of my methods." It was another stream of income based on the intellectual property I had protected from Marcus's theft. I also received an invitation to join the board of directors for the Manufacturing Excellence Institute, a nonprofit organization focused on improving industrial operations. At 29, I was becoming a recognized authority in operational efficiency and strategic management. 2 years after Marcus's firing, I received an unexpected phone call. The voice was familiar but strained. "Alex, this is Marcus Webb. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to apologize." I was shocked. "Marcus? How did you get my number?" "I've been following your success in the industry publications. Your VP promotion, the award, everything. I wanted to say that I'm sorry for what I did. You deserved better treatment." I leaned back in my chair, curious about where this conversation was heading. "What have you been doing since leaving Thompson?" "I've been struggling to find work," he admitted. "When potential employers research my background, they find articles about how I was fired for stealing an employee's presentation. My reputation in the industry is destroyed." There was a long pause. Alex, I was wondering if you might be willing to provide a reference. Maybe mention that I've learned from my mistakes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After stealing my work and trying to humiliate me, Marcus was asking me to help repair his career. Marcus, I appreciate the apology, but I can't provide a reference. What you did wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. And choices have consequences. Please, Alex. I have a family to support. I've been unemployed for 2 years. You should have thought about that before deleting my presentation. After hanging up with Marcus, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for his situation, but a larger part recognized that his downfall was entirely self-inflicted. I shared the conversation with my assistant, who had become a trusted advisor on various professional matters. He actually asked you for a reference, she said incredulously. Some people never learn, I replied. They think consequences are things that happen to other people. That evening, I reflected on how much my life had changed. From a junior analyst whose work was being stolen to a VP whose methods were being licensed by consulting firms. The transformation had been built on one simple principle: document everything and always have a backup plan. I had written about this philosophy in my blog and speeches, but Marcus's call reminded me of its importance. Too many talented people allow their work to be stolen because they trust the wrong people or fail to protect themselves properly. The next week, I received an email from a graduate student at Harvard Business School. She was writing her thesis on workplace intellectual property theft and wanted to interview me about my experience with Marcus. Your case has become a textbook example of how to combat workplace theft, she wrote. Business schools are teaching your documentation and backup strategies as standard professional practices. It was gratifying to know that my experience was helping train the next generation of professionals to protect themselves more effectively. 5 years after the presentation incident, Thompson Industries announced that my operational efficiency methods had saved the company over $40 million. The board voted to name me Chief Operating Officer, making me the youngest COO in the company's 90-year history. The promotion celebration was held in the same conference room where Marcus had tried to steal my work. As I looked around the room filled with colleagues and board members, I remembered that day when everything had changed. CEO Foster gave a speech highlighting my contributions to the company's success. Alex transformed our understanding of operational efficiency, she said. But more importantly, he demonstrated that competence and integrity will always triumph over politics and theft. After the celebration, I returned to my office and found a package on my desk. Inside was a framed copy of the original Business Weekly article that had first brought national attention to my story. A note was attached from Jamie, who was now a department manager herself. Alex, you changed more than just our company's operations. You changed how we think about protecting our work and standing up for ourselves. Thank you for showing us that good people can win. I hung the article on my wall next to my other awards and achievements. It served as a reminder of where I had started and how far strategic thinking could take someone willing to plan ahead and execute carefully. My blog now had over 500,000 subscribers, and I had published a book titled Strategic Documentation: Protecting Your Work in the Modern Workplace. The book became a bestseller in business strategy categories. Today, as I write this from my COO office, I often think about the lesson Marcus taught me without meaning to. His theft attempt forced me to develop the strategic thinking skills that ultimately led to my success. If he had simply done his own work instead of stealing mine, he might still be employed. If he had supported his team instead of exploiting them, he could have built a successful career. But he chose the easy path of taking credit for other people's efforts, and that choice destroyed him. I've received hundreds of emails from people who used my methods to protect their work and advance their careers. Software engineers, financial analysts, marketing specialists, and consultants across the country have successfully exposed managers who tried to steal their ideas. The key lesson isn't about revenge, it's about preparation. Document everything. Build relationships with decision makers. Always have backup plans. And never trust your most important work to people who haven't earned that trust. Marcus's phone call 2 years ago was the last time we spoke. I heard through industry contacts that he eventually found work as a mid-level manager at a small company outside the industry. His career never recovered from the scandal, and his reputation remained damaged. I felt no satisfaction in his continued struggles, but I also felt no guilt. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The difference between us wasn't talent or intelligence, it was integrity and strategic thinking. My presentation that Marcus deleted 5 years ago became the foundation for a career beyond anything I had imagined. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us create opportunities for the best things that follow. The backup plan saved more than just my presentation. It saved my entire future.